Now, it's another day in court for NDC's Assin North MP James Jachikwason. And as has been promised, the minority were not in parliament, but they were also not in court. So where have they been all this while? We'll examine this shortly. But Mr. Kwason was in court and he set in motion multiple legal processes, including a fresh action at the Supreme Court in a bid to put his trial on hold. He is demanding additional documents from state prosecutors to fully understand the case against him, as well as asking that this day, his day-to-day trial be received. Now, Attorney General Godfrey Adame is, however, accusing the legislator of engaging in a plot to prevent the court from hearing the case at all costs. Joseph Akable, who is our court correspondent, joins me via Zoom with more. Joseph, this view by the AG did not sit well with lawyers for Mr. Kwason. Tell us more. Blake, can you unmute so we can hear what you're telling us? So we're here with Joseph Akable, who's joining me via Zoom to tell us more. We understand that the AG, that point he did not take lightly. The view by the AG did not sit well with lawyers for Mr. Kwason. Akable, you were in court. Tell us more.
So as far as lawyers for James Jachikwason are concerned, they believe that it is just in case of making sure that due process is followed. That is how come he's making these applications. And so they did indicate forcefully that they believe that it's in the interest of justice that the case is put on hold. Abraham Amaliba, who is the NDC's Director of Legal, told us after proceedings that the AG was wrong to have made that particular assertion, and that in previous cases handled by the AG himself, he had made similar arguments that it was in the interest of justice for such a matter to be put on hold when the applications at higher courts, such as the Court of Appeal and the Supreme Court.
From the side of the NDC, that's Jachikwason's lawyers, we're putting up the argument that we could not proceed with the trial once these applications are pending before higher courts than the Court of High Court. Particularly the application for certiorari, which is before the Supreme Court. In that application, we are seeking for some reliefs, which are that one, because the Attorney General failed to fully make disclosures to lawyers of Jachikwason, there was a need for the Supreme Court to determine that matter because the disclosures were not fully made. We don't know from our side what the Attorney General was hiding from, because the rules are that you must fully disclose. But in this case, the Attorney General did some half disclosures, not full disclosure, which meant the Attorney General had something to hide. It is for this reason that lawyers for Jachikwason indicated to the court that because disclosures were not fully made in accordance with Republic versus Bafoboni's case, there's a need to stay proceedings.
I mean, what does Mr. Kwason still make of that?
It is mind-boggling that the Attorney General should be speaking that way. This same Attorney General, in a different matter, ex-party Kenya Japan, indicated to the court, and that was at the Supreme Court, that because disclosures were not fully made, clearly it was wrong for the court law to proceed. And in that case, Justice Yoni Kolendi actually said that the refusal of the court to stay but to proceed is a clear indication of bias against the accused person. So he cannot approbate and reprobate it. That is not the work of an Attorney General.
Joseph, what has Mr. Kwason himself been saying on this?
In fact, in terms of the proceedings so far, there are a number of individuals that come over to the court premises to throw their support behind him. As some of them were gathered today, he approached them and he addressed them. And he says what is happening is injustice, but he's confident that he will emerge victorious.
Good afternoon to every one of you. I just want to take a moment here to thank all of you coming out of your busy schedules, devoting your time to support me. It means a lot to me, and it means a lot to the party, NDC. and also to all Ghanaians. This is a fight for justice and democracy.
Thank you.
Because today it may be happening to Quayson, another day it will be happening to someone else. And we want to stop these things in their tracks. A true democracy should have a transparent system, a fair justice trial, and no kangaroo courts. So I'm very hopeful. I believe in the rule of law, and I'm very hopeful that this matter will come to a very favorable conclusion. Thank you very much. God bless you.
So Joseph, run us through the outstanding legal processes on this.
And so first, there's the Court of Appeal application where the Court of Appeal is being asked to set aside the High Court's decision that's to hold a trial on a day-to-day basis. There's also the Court of Appeal being asked to put the trial at the High Court on hold pending its determination of that particular matter. Then there is this fresh application at the Supreme Court asking the Supreme Court to prohibit the High Court from proceeding with a case because the AG has not complied as far as they are concerned with the rules of disclosure, i.e. they've not received the entire complement of the documents that they want to be received. And so on 18th of July, the High Court will have to deliver its ruling on the issue of whether, because of these outstanding legal processes, it should put the trial on hold, or it will go ahead with the processes, despite the fact that various decisions may come from the highest court of the land, the Supreme Court, and the Court of Appeal, which may have a potential to change how things take place at the High Court base.
We also understand that some ministers of state were in court as well.
Yes, quite interestingly, two of them, Kweko Fore-Siama, the transport minister, and K.T. Hammond, the Adansia Sokwa MP and also Minister for Trade and Industry. For K.T. Hammond, we know that there is a pending motion at the High Court where James Gyakye Quayson is standing trial, filed by lawyers for James Gyakye Quayson. They are citing him for contempt of court. He had made comments in which he had likened the James Gyakye Quayson case to that of Adamu Sakande, who we know was eventually convicted by the High Court, and made a point that James Gyakye Quayson will suffer the same. And this is what the lawyers deem to be amount to contempt. And so they are asking the High Court to punish him. But that is supposed to be dealt with next week. But he was nonetheless in court today. And what through his interaction with some of his colleagues in the courtroom, he says that you guys have dragged me here, so I'm here to see what is taking place in the courtroom. And we know that he has publicly indicated that he's ready to respond to that particular matter. So that is another issue that will be dealt with by the court later on.
Okay. Now, we know that the minority MPs had indicated that they will show up in court. Were all the 137 minority MPs in court today?
No, Brace, not at all. In fact, in terms of since that particular directive was issued, there hasn't been any instance where they've even reached the number 50 to even go beyond 50 and we can go into the hundreds to be closer to 137. Today, for instance, worst case, just about 20 of them that came into the courtroom, led by the minority leader, Dr. Cassiel Atoforsen, the deputy minority leader, Emmanuel Amma Kofi-Boa. There was also Kwame Gavins Abuja, the chief whip, and then other members of parliament like Samuel Okujeto, Blakwa, Roxy Nelson, Dafiamepo, South Dai MP, Madina MP, Francis Xavier, Susu, and a few others who joined at this particular session today. Interesting.
Grateful to you. So, question is, where were the members of Parliament? Let's cross over now to Parliament, where my colleague Kweku Asante, our Parliamentary Affairs correspondent, joins us from Kweku. Can you confirm that the minority MPs were not in Parliament?
Well, they were not. In fact, a few of them were around to do other things, but not on the floor. In fact, Mahama Yaga was in Parliament. He was on the corridors. We spoke to him about this boycott. There was a number of them who had to do other business. For instance, there was a TD caucus event today in Parliament at the DF Annan Auditorium. There were a few NDC MPs there. I saw a few NDC MPs' vehicles coming and going out. In fact, on the floor, one NDP MP made the point that a number of these NDC MPs are in their offices and not coming to the floor. So yes, they did not turn up to the chamber to do parliamentary business in compliance with that directive from their leadership that they boycott sittings. But just like Joseph Akable has said, a number of them, the majority of them, were also not in court. So it begs the question, if you are boycotting proceedings of parliament to say that you are doing so to solidarize with your colleague and you'll be going to court with him. Why are you not in court? And why are you also not in parliament on the floor of the House? So these are questions leadership of the Minority Caucus would have to answer in terms of what exactly is going on. Is it a fiat that was given that, well, we are just boycotting parliament because of the criminal trial, or just like the minority that had actually said at the time, that they are actually going to accompany James Jachikwesin to court. So, Brace, just like Akabla said, 20 of them at most were in court, but in parliament, there was not a single one on the floor of the House whilst business was going on, actually with some MPs accusing their colleague of actually sabotaging business in the House.
So with that development, what then happened in Parliament?
Well, so eventually Parliament had to adjourn. They simply did not have the numbers to continue. It actually also begs the question, if you look at the standing orders of Parliament, the majority side alone are able to do business and do everything on their own without the cooperation or the presence of the minority. The standing orders say that the numbers needed to transact ordinary business is at least 1/3 of all MPs. That is 92 at most. The majority side have 138 NPP MPs. If 92 of them turn up on the floor, they could have quorum to do business. When it comes to decision making, that is at least half of all MPs. Half of 275 is 137.5, which you can round that up to 138. The majority, again, have 138 to be able to do business. Okay. So they can still vote on crucial matters. But the numbers on the floor at various points today, 15 to 20, alternating between that. And eventually, they themselves feel that they could not do much business. They took the business statement for the ensuing week and then eventually had to adjourn to next week, Tuesday.
Thanks for this update, Kweku. Now, Dr. Rashid Rahman is the Executive Director for Africa Center for Parliamentary Affairs. He has been actively been engaged in institutional, parliamentary, public financial management, evaluation and governance issues for many years. What does he make of what's happening in our parliament now? Doc, I'm grateful to you for joining us. First, your reaction to the fact that the members of parliament were not on the floor and they were also not in court.
Yeah, that's making this situation a little bit murkier, because if you remember, when this boycott started, I indicated that if they are not careful at some point, they will be contravening their own standing orders. And we heard what happened earlier in the week with the speaker citing them for breaching the standing orders, and that they have to seek permission each time they are going to absent themselves. Now, if you don't have members in court and you don't have them in the House, that might be a strategy that's about to put them in trouble, because then Ghanaians are going to ask, where are the members? Because even going to court without permission is bad enough in terms of their own procedures. And then not showing up in court and not showing up in the House, I think it's an affront on Ghanaians, because you are hired to work at Joy FM. You have to show up and work. And MPs are hired to work. They have to show up and work at the very least. Again, let me add, based on what your correspondent has said, it's not only the MPs who are guilty of this. I think the entire parliament is guilty of absenteeism. And this is not peculiar to this eighth parliament. We've seen that over the years. Speaker upon speaker has had to, adjourn sittings in order to look for the numbers. I think it's getting to a point where perhaps we might have to start looking at other ways of making sure that our MPs show up. In some parliaments, you don't show up, your salary gets deducted. Apart from the fact that, in our case, the 15 consecutive times means that you have vacated your seat. We haven't seen that happen before. Unfortunately, the standing orders don't have these provisions where you get punished, apart from the provision that you have automatically vacated your seat, which has never happened. I know the standing orders are being reviewed. Maybe if I had my way, I would have said that there should be a clause inserted there. I mean, if you absent yourself for even a day without permission, you get punished for that.
Okay. So what does this make our parliament look like? If both the majority and the minority sides are all not on the floor to carry out the reasons why they are being paid to be there, what does it make the parliament look like from your experience?
Yeah, it makes the parliament look like an empty house. I mean, that's what it makes it look like. Rather than a full house where, I mean, government and national business ought to be transacted on the daily basis. So I think our parliamentarians will need to up the game a little bit. I know they get sometimes caught up in committee meetings. They get caught up in international travel, other businesses of the house. But all these can be streamlined in such a way that, like in many parliaments, committee meetings don't take place or other meetings don't take place when plenary is taking place. So that we know that at all times, each caucus can account for its members. But sometimes you see plenary going on and some side meetings are going on. And some MPs, genuinely are at those meetings. Others take advantage of that. Then the big elephant in the room, the marriage between the executive and the legislature. So, I mean, ministers who are not there would say they are doing ministerial business. Yes, I think they are ministers and at the same time MPs. So that's why many are saying it's about time we took a very serious look at the Constitution and make sure that we go for a very serious divorce, maybe one that is supervised by the Supreme Court, so that Parliament is Parliament, executive is executive, and then we can cure, this lacuna that has bedeviled, and on which maybe sometimes some MPs take advantage and absent themselves from the House.
But in trying to deal with the whole issue of absenteeism, you said that probably we should look at how we can get these ministers, the appointment of ministers on parliament dealt with. But how do we deal with absenteeism in general? Because you mentioned that various speakers over the years have not been able to deal with it. If we are not careful, we'll carry this into the future. But how do we handle it?
Yes, I think you recently heard what happened during the Joasafo, Honorable Kennedy at Japan, the
Henry Korte.
Greater Accra. I mean, have you heard anything again?
No.
Okay. So you have the microphone. I think you should go there and try to ask them what's going on. So I think, like I was saying, in some countries, for instance, in the Scandinavian parliaments, where they know they have taken a very realistic approach to this. They know we cannot sack our own members, or if our own members show up before the privileges committee, we can't sit there and judge our own members and say, kick them out of parliament. They took a realistic approach. You absent yourself, your salary gets cut. I think that is maybe one that can bite much better and faster than the whole privileges kind of approach, and then we go in a run around, and then finally the matter goes very quiet, and then we forget all about it and then start dealing with the next issues. So maybe a new approach to dealing with absenteeism is what we need in our parliament.
And who begins this new approach? Because they are beneficiaries of the current system, and of course it might probably be difficult for them to change it. So who begins this new approach?
Well, that's a tough question. I don't have the answer. I hope that they are all minded and they are all worried. When you bring like the visual that is behind you showing an empty house, I think it should bother all our honorable members, because they are supposed to be honorable. And if we hire them to go and work and they don't show up at work, I think they have to give us answers for that. So we cannot go from outside, you and I cannot go from outside and say we want to bring about this change unless we exercise our franchise. Okay. And that is only every 4 years. So this should begin from within. I mean, even if it's going to be against their own interests. I mean, I think they should look at the long-term interest and how they want to be remembered in this republic, that when they are all gone away from that house, we will look back and remember that when they were there, they were gallant men and women who instituted certain reforms that have made our democracy stronger than they met it.
We know our parliament is one that has a lot of respect in the international arena. With what is happening, how does it impact how we are viewed globally?
Yeah, I think we still live on our past glories, and I think very soon, I mean, this reality and our real kind of station and situation in the democratic continuum on the continent, I think will be catching up with us very, very quickly. We have a lot of diplomats who are here. We have international visitors and so on. Very soon, if we are not careful, when you mention the name of our country as a beacon of democracy, people are going to begin to question that. And these are some of the things that can lead to that.
Okay. Grateful to you, but kindly stay.